got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug. You're conservative in your financial positions, but you're very liberal socially. They were talking about you as such a favorable.
When you were on The View, I think it was around 2015, back when you were running for president, you were introduced as our friend Donald Trump. Whoopi Goldberg gave you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar hugged you. Barbara Walters hugged you. They all spoke about you in a favorable light, describing you as conservative financially but socially liberal. At that time, you were treated like a celebrity ally, not a threat. The media narrative was warm, friendly, almost protective. Fast forward to now, and stop whatever you're doing, because what comes next completely rewrites the story people thought they understood about Joe Rogan and Donald Trump. This is the same Joe Rogan who gave Trump a massive podcast platform right before the election, a sit-down that energized millions of young male voters and helped Trump secure critical momentum. Rogan's endorsement mattered. It shaped culture, conversation, and turnout. But now, that support has collapsed in dramatic fashion. This is a full-blown reversal. Rogan didn't just quietly distance himself. He went directly at Trump. And Trump, for all his bravado, hasn't responded with a Rogan podcast sit-down of his own. Why? Because he's afraid of facing the one man who once helped him win, and now seems to have something Trump doesn't want exposed. Trigger the like button now, because the algorithm rewards speed, and this revelation needs daylight. Mainstream media is avoiding this story, and that silence is the vulnerability. July 2025. The Joe Rogan Experience, the most popular podcast in America with over 20 million YouTube subscribers, releases an episode that detonates inside Trump's orbit. The topic? Jeffrey Epstein. Rogan calls it a line in the sand. He looks directly into the camera and accuses Trump and his allies of gaslighting their own supporters. They are trying to gaslight you, he says. He explains how powerful people are compromised, controlled, and protected. Epstein wasn't an anomaly. He was a system. Trump had promised to release the Epstein file. He promised accountability. Young men believed him. They voted for him. Then, on July 6, 2025, the FBI and DOJ released a 2-page memo claiming there was no client list, no evidence. Case closed. Rogan dismantled the claim in under a minute. When you were on The View, and I believe this was around 2015, back when you were first running for president, you were introduced as our friend Donald Trump. Whoopi Goldberg stood up and gave you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar followed with a hug. Barbara Walters leaned in warmly. The panel laughed with you, not at you. They talked about you in glowing terms, explaining to the audience that while you were conservative financially, you were socially liberal. You weren't framed as a radical or a danger. You were framed as familiar, charming, and safe. That moment matters because it shows how different the media relationship with Trump once was, and how much has changed since. Now stop whatever you're doing, because what follows shatters the version of events most people think they understand. This is about Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, and a reversal so severe that it has quietly rattled the political landscape while mainstream media avoids touching it head-on. This is the same Joe Rogan who once gave Trump one of the most powerful platforms in modern media history, a massive podcast sit-down just before the election, when timing mattered most. That episode reached millions of young men, many of whom don't watch cable news, don't read op-eds, and don't trust legacy media. Rogan's influence helped normalize Trump again for that audience. It helped Trump win, and now that same man has turned. This isn't a soft distancing. This isn't silent. This is a public, deliberate, unmistakable break, and Trump is losing it behind the scenes. But notice what he hasn't done. He hasn't gone back on Rogan's podcast to confront it. He hasn't debated it. He hasn't clarified it.
He hasn't faced it, because for the first time in years, Trump is facing someone he can't dominate with sound bites, insults, or media pressure. Rogan doesn't play that game, and Trump knows it. Trigger the like button now, not as a joke, but because the algorithm literally decides whether people ever hear this. Every second matters. This story is being buried in plain sight, and the silence around it is exactly the point. Let's shine light into the dark corner mainstream media doesn't want to illuminate. July 2025, the Joe Rogan Experience, the most popular podcast in America with over 20 million subscribers on YouTube alone, releases an episode that sends shockwaves straight through Trump's political orbit. The topic is Jeffrey Epstein. Rogan doesn't hedge. He doesn't soften his words. He calls it a line in the sand. He pauses, looks directly into the camera, and speaks to the audience. Not politicians, not journalists, but regular Americans. They're trying to gaslight you. That sentence changes everything. Rogan explains how power actually works. How people don't get controlled by ideology, but by leverage. How compromising situations are engineered, recorded, hidden, and used. Epstein wasn't just a criminal, Rogan argues. He was infrastructure, a mechanism, a system designed to entrap powerful people so they could be managed later. They want you compromised when you get into a position of power, Rogan says, so they can control you. He describes how these operations work. You're rich, you're famous, you're untouchable. Then someone offers you something that feels consequence-free. A private island, total discretion. What happens on the island stays on the island. That's not indulgence. That's a trap. This is where Rogan draws the line, because Trump had made a promise. He didn't just hint. He explicitly told voters he would release the Epstein files. He said he would expose everyone. He said he would drain the swamp. Young men believed him. Millions of them. They voted. They defended him. They trusted him. And Rogan was part of that trust bridge. Then came July 6, 2025. The FBI and DOJ release a 2-page memo. 2 pages. After decades of abuse, trafficking, international connections, connections, intelligence ties, sealed indictments, and suspicious deaths. The government says, we reviewed everything. There is no client list, no evidence, no one else involved. Case closed. Rogan dismantles that claim in under 30 seconds. That doesn't make any sense, he says flatly. And he's right. Epstein was convicted of trafficking minors for sex. Trafficking requires clients. You don't traffic people into a vacuum. Yet the Trump-led FBI and DOJ want the public to accept that Epstein acted alone. No vayas, no tapes, no liberty, no list. Rogan isn't yelling. He's calm. That's what makes it devastating. He reminds listeners that Trump's own FBI director, Kash Patel, appeared on his show just weeks earlier promising transparency. Patel talked about hidden vaults. He talked about shocking discoveries. He talked about video evidence from Epstein's cell. Then the video was released with a missing minute. 1 minute gone. The most important minute. And Rogan says what everyone is thinking. Do you think we're babies? By October 2025, Rogan goes further. He ties the Epstein deception to everything else. Immigration raids tearing families apart. Long-term residents being deported. Promises broken one by one. He explains why he didn't aggressively argue with Patel on air. I just wanted to put it out there, Rogan says. Let the internet do its work. And it did. People noticed. They noticed the missing minute. They noticed the contradictions. They noticed the reversal. They noticed the names that kept appearing. Donald Trump among them. Trump, who partied with Epstein. Trump, photographed repeatedly with Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. Trump, who once called Epstein a terrific guy, who liked beautiful women on the younger side. Rogan wasn't having it. The tone shifted from curiosity to disbelief to anger. There's no murder. Case closed. Nothing to see here. Rogan mocks, summarizing the official story. 2 pages later, after years of investigation, and the public is told to forget everything they saw. But Americans don't forget. Rogan warns Trump supporters directly. This will come back. This will matter. This will cost Republicans in future elections. Translation: you lied to us, and we know it. The conversation is now recorded. Archived, shared, downloaded, reposted. Trump can't delete it. He can't intimidate it. He can't tweet it away. And the one man who could force a reckoning, Joe Rogan, is no longer on his side. That's why Trump won't sit down with him.